Producer gets very mad when I don't do this. All right, go time. Hello, I'm Carrie Gard, CEO of MKG Marketing, and welcome to this live roundtable where we're going to discuss product marketing. What was the intention of the role? Where has it evolved to? And where do we see it going? Before I launch into introductions and questions, some quick housekeeping. This is our promise to our audience because we are here to serve you. And it's a two-way street. And so what we hope in return, we promise to keep the discussion at hand. It's why we're here and what we'll honor. This isn't about our companies or selling. This is an honest, authentic conversation with real experts who are living and breathing this challenge and how we can learn from them and applying it to our own brands. For those listening, please engage. We got Mike Crass here in the comments hanging out with you all, and he'll be making sure that we get to each and every one of your questions. And if we run out of time, we'll be sure to sync up asynchronously to get those answered. Mike, so grateful for you. Thank you, sir. Let's dive right into introductions. Can each of you introduce yourselves, name, title, and very quickly share how you got into product marketing? I'll start with Andy. Kick us off.
Hey, everybody. I'm Andy Georginas. I work for a company called Seer. I am the senior product marketing manager, and I sort of fell into product marketing because I started as a generalist, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Andy. Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne Ellegood, and I'm a product marketing director. I stumbled into product marketing sort of by accident by way of being a copywriter many, many moons ago. So,
Ashish?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashish Milpani. I lead product marketing for the digital experience business unit for Progress. And my journey to product marketing had quite a few stops in the middle. I started from an application engineering role, did product management, and then I figured out I like to tell stories, and that's why I'm in product marketing.
I love that. Yes, stories. Matthew Delman, bring us home.
Hi, everyone. I am Matthew Delman. I am a product marketing manager at Prevalent, a third-party risk management platform. And much like Anne, I got into product marketing kind of from content marketing, managed to talk myself into a job in a cybersecurity company because I was a strong writer and they wanted someone who understood how to create copy and to scale into product marketing. And here I am.
I heard a lot of themes throughout everything each of you said, from journalists to writing was definitely storytelling, definitely strong themes there. How else does this differ? Or maybe this is the core differentiator from other marketing channels or efforts or roles as you would define them. And I will start with Anne. How is this different? How's product marketing different, in your opinion?
Other roles that I have held in the past, or just in general?
In general, to the different marketing functions.
Oh gosh. I think it's really similar to a lot of the other marketing functions, in that no matter what you do, you have to know the people you're trying to reach. So that can touch content, that touches digital, that touches just about everything you do in marketing. So I would say that really it's part of a much bigger wheel and spoke where everything's running and working well together. It all just flows seamlessly. But I'd be curious to hear what others' perspectives are on that.
What about you, Matt? What's your opinion on how it's different than the other marketing functions?
So, to me, at least, product marketing has been much more about being able to build internal consensus on a path forward as opposed to many of the other marketing disciplines. It's actually funny. I just had this conversation with a content marketer who was trying to figure out ways to work with an incoming product marketer. Since I've had both roles, she kind of tapped me for my perspective on it. And ultimately, the way that I think about it is that product marketing is about driving things at a strategic level, whereas you're trying to understand everything at all of these different inputs and communicate them out to the different teams within the organization, the different marketing teams, the different sales teams, the product team. Now there is like this element of like being a marketing generalist in there as well, but the difference here with product marketing, at least for me, is that I don't need to understand how paid media works. I don't need to understand how those different individual platforms operate. I can have input into kind of how we tell the story in the different platforms, but I don't need to like understand the ins and outs of LinkedIn advertising, whereas someone in demand gen or a paid media specialist would need to understand those things.
That makes sense. How about you, Ashish? What's your opinion?
So for me, when you look at product marketing, I see that as a core function in marketing, right? I mean, I usually, when you're forming a marketing department, product marketing is probably one of the first couple of hires that you would do as a new marketing leader. And the reason behind that is, product marketing has to work with all other departments within the marketing team to make the marketing engine really function smoothly. And all of this has to do with the entire customer journey, right? And when you look at from really awareness to how does somebody become aware of your product to they invest in your product, they become your customer, they continue to invest with you and add more kind of subscribe to more stuff from you. So if you look at the entire journey, we have different marketing functions that are focused on different parts of that journey, right? I mean, you look at demand gen that's focused on the top, really making sure that awareness or driving customers to making them really become aware of what we have. From there to we have what we call customer marketing folks who are focused on the end part of the journey, where they're focused on really driving retention, renewals, whatnot. But as a product marketer, then you are looking at this entire journey and making sure that your customer is not, I mean, how do you make sure that somebody finds out about you versus in what do you do to keep them happy, and what sort of help do you give them, give the customer marketing team? I think that's for me the biggest difference, is that the product marketing role over the years has evolved, and now as the customer journeys have spread beyond just acquisition to more focus on retention, even product marketing's role has evolved to support that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's I think a fundamental difference, is that you have to understand the entire marketing org. You may not have to understand, to Matt's point, the nuts and bolts of a paid ad campaign, but you have to guide the messaging for that campaign and sort of understand how each piece of that function works, so that as you're moving through the funnel, you're adjusting your messaging and working on the right content and guiding that journey and plugging the right people from the rest of your organization in where they belong, subject matter experts and the like, to like provide the kind of the best experience for your customer as they're moving through that prospect journey, I guess.
Do you feel like it's changed, from what it, the intention of it was, of being a product marketer? I know, Andy, when you sort of mentioned how you got into product marketing around being a generalist, is that part of like the shift we're seeing in the market? Do you think there's a shift happening, or do you think product marketing is still, that was the intention of what it was and that's what it is today? Who wants to kick off? All right, Anne.
So I think product marketers are doing a lot more than what the original charge was. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to see other heads kind of nodding along with that statement, because it's, back to the first question. And I said, yes, it's similar. That's, I guess, from my experience, because I've had to be a generalist in other areas. I've held marketing leadership roles where that's just required, where you have to understand how all these other things work. Well, that also can lead to a little bit of creep in what your initial charge is, and that they're like, oh, well, hey, this product marketer already stands XYZ, so hey, let's just have them do some of the content stuff. Let's have them do some of these other things. And now product marketers, especially if they are being the first hire brought onto a team, you're charged with doing everything and anything, in addition to coming up with the go-to-market strategy, the messaging, the whole wheelhouse really comes into play there. So I know that other folks have nodded their heads and like, yeah, this is the way we see the market is shifting. So love to
That
hear.
describes my role pretty.
Is that what's happening for you, Andy? Tell us more.
Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining, because I love writing content, and that's an aspect of the role, that I really relish. So I'm glad that's part of the product marketing function at my company. But what Ann said is very true. You come on as a first hire, and you're sort of like, I hate this term, but I'm going to use it anyway, the Swiss Army knife, right? Like, you're able to kind of at least rudimentarily do almost everything. And then you might be working with a sales leader or a marketing leader, like a director or CMO, who kind of fills in the blanks as you're building your team and you're scaling, right? And then I think the residual effect of that is that later on, when your team is built, you're still kind of involved in everything to some degree. I've tried to take an intentional step back where I can, for example, with paid ads. Like when we hired a demand gen guy, I was like, cool, I don't have to really think much about paid ads other than, I review the messaging, but that's it. So that's a relief for me too, because I don't like doing that part. If I'm being totally honest.
No, and to your point, right? I mean, what's changed? Like, if you look at even smaller companies, of course, I mean, you see product marketers do much more than that. They're pretty much being a generalist. But even at larger companies, when you have all these supporting functions that are in place, product marketing has evolved from just talking about product and driving sales enablement. Now I am responsible for the entire go-to-market strategy for the business unit for let's say next year. So what does that really mean, right? I mean, I have to work with sales and understand what sales plays we want to run, what sort of enablement the sales team needs. I have to work with demand gen and really figure out what are the net new campaigns that we are going to run, to drive new logo acquisition. I have to work with customer marketing in some cases, where I'm really working closely with them to understand what sort of retention plays that we want to run, or what sort of help do they need to drive that retention. Driving thought leadership, working closely with product management to drive product launches. So all of this falls under your bigger responsibility. Then the question is, again, I mean, how do you kind of take all of this on while doing your job, whereas of course you got to write some content, and work with analysts too. so yeah, I mean, the role has evolved, and so there is, I won't call it so much of a generalist marketing, but you have to understand how everything else works, so that you are able to kind of give them enough guidance, saying, hey, this is what we want to communicate, now it's up to you, how do you want to take this forward.
Yeah, I viewed product marketing over the years kind of as the more strategic the conductor in the orchestra. Like, you don't necessarily understand, to my earlier point, like the nuts and bolts of how everything works, but you know who knows how it works, and then you make sure that you're asking that person and including them in the plans, and kind of ensuring that consistency of message across the entire company and across all of these different platforms. I will say that I have seen a lot of startups, like the baby startups, like seed Series A, when they're doing their first marketing hire, they're hiring a product marketing person. And like at the product marketing manager or director of product marketing level, it seems to be less common. Now, granted, small sample size. I haven't looked at every universe, at like the entire universe of job ads for these companies to hire someone who is demand gen or growth versus hiring someone who is a product marketer as a very first hire. And then that person, even though their title is product marketing, really they are the marketing team.
Yeah. I'm curious about size and how that fits into it. There's been a couple startups mentioned, there's been enterprise, bigger companies mentioned. So it sounds like when you're brought in as a product marketer on the startup side, as that first hire, you're a bit of a Swiss Army knife versus the enterprise where you fit into a bigger organization. Am I capturing that? What about the in-between? What about the scale-ups? What about those medium-sized businesses? Do they need product marketing? Should they be thinking about product marketing?
Yeah. The mid-sized companies, or like the scale-ups, as you call them, they might have a slightly bigger team. Like you might have a demand gen leader, content marketing leader, like a chief marketing officer or a VP kind of leading the entire marketing strategy organization. But you do still need a product marketing person in there, because that's the person who is almost the translator, essentially, and the go-between for the more technical people in the organization. And then as you get into like the larger and larger companies, the role of product marketing you start to get more specialization within that. Like maybe you have someone who is the head of sales enablement, and that is all that they do. They take the sales enablement and they manage kind of understanding how, like, educating sales on new products, on new talking points, on new talk tracks. And that's the only thing that they do. Maybe you have a head of competitive research where all that they're doing is paying attention to your competitive landscape. And then you could have product marketers who the only thing that they do is work on like messaging and positioning and product launches, depending on your scale of product launches, essentially, in the organization. But as you get larger and larger, you get more and more niche in the roles.
Right.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, even like I was saying, even at a larger company, right? I mean, I was working for a startup before this, where I was the first kind of hire beyond after the CMO, apart from a few others who were already there. But when they started building the team, so I was the first product marketer on the job, and I built my rest of my team. Whereas even like now, I'm part of Progress, which is much bigger in a public company. But even at Progress, right, the breadth of the role it kind of stays the same, right? You, as a product marketer, you have all these supporting functions, but then it's still it's your job to connect the dots and make sure that you are able to kind of lay the vision out and make sure that the engine is going to run smoothly, and all these kind of functions have what they need for them to operate efficiently, kind of to drive the required growth.
I think it also depends on the format of your organization. Like some organizations, scale ups in particular, might start out as a single product company, but as they scale, they may break into different products, or if they have a product and a service. And then, you'll have people that kind of attend to the various, I'll call them portfolios. And as the company continues to scale, you can have a team working on a product or a service, and you can have a team, or a single individual contributor. It just kind of depends on the business case for the function. You know, is it a kind of a legacy function or a legacy feature that's been around for a long time and it kind of just is coasting along, versus something that's up and coming and it's the big push? Maybe it's where a lot of it, like recent investment has been placed and now they really want to drive that into the market. So they'll put a team behind it to really, like, you know, give it a strong go-to-market push. I think that's a factor too. Is kind of like the complexity of your go-to-market, you know, offering.
And do you have any thoughts around where, you know, why this is happening, or in terms of the organizational structure and where product marketing comes into play in terms of the startup versus the scale up versus the enterprise?
Can you phrase that a bit differently so I'm a little more clear?
Sure. I feel like you've lived these lives in terms of being a product marketer, but being in being in a startup versus being in an enterprise. How has your role differed between being that first hire versus coming into a more structured organization?
Being the first hire, you feel as if the weight of the world's on your shoulders. Like, don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. This is, you know, you are going to set the tone and the pace for the eventual future success of the organization, right? So, you know, that's one piece of it. And then it's thinking about, okay, what resources am I going to need to hire or bring on, either full-time or at a contract basis, or vendors I'll need to work with. Whereas when you go to a much larger organization, it's stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. and for some folks, you know, that's hard to do, because for my, you know, just my personality, the way I've always worked is I don't believe in there being any I in team. Like, if some other team or someone else needs help and I know darn good and well I can throw in and I can help them, then I'm going to do it and then ask for forgiveness later. And I know there's probably a lot of people going, oh, you know, don't do that. But at the same time, it's, you know, nobody wants to feel like they're left out on an island to sink or swim. And if there's other people who are willing to contribute, I think that just moves everything forward. And it can be challenging at times, but I've been able to float between those worlds, so to speak, where I can go back to roll up the sleeves mentality and let's just get this done, you know, scrappy startup mentality, whereas enterprise or you know, I was told coming into a larger organization that, yeah, you're one of how many hundreds, if not thousands, of employees. It's much more relaxed and all that. And it really depends on the organization itself, right? And how things are structured, you know. So I think everybody kind of finds their footing and the pace in which they like to work. But I don't know if anyone else here can agree, but if someone else on your team needs help, I don't care what department I'm going to do what needs to be done to help. I've worked on technical documentation. I've ghostwritten stuff for CEOs before. I mean, this is, you know, it's like written press releases and speak to analysts, and, you know, it's you do what needs to be done to get the job done, right? Because right now, the current economy and everything, and I know everybody's so sick of hearing this, but it's profitability matters. You know, the big days of living high on the hog and they're over. It's like, it's either the business is going to be profitable, or there's going to be consequences. And usually those consequences are people get put to pasture, or folks, you know, they wind up spinning down the organization or hope for some sort of liquidity event of some kind. So.
Yeah, it's a tough world. That's actually dovetails nicely into my next point of view around how the market and or the buyer, maybe both, have sort of impacted this shift. I don't know that I feel like product marketing has been like the dark horse of like the marketing team. It's not something we hear too much, but then recently it's coming out of the woodwork between my shows. I've been having a lot more product marketers on my show. And you know, maybe it's like one of those things where you buy a certain car, that was how you see the car everywhere. So maybe that's happening a little bit for me, for sure. But I do feel like product marketing is starting to take the lead here. I've talked to CMOs who have come from the product marketing realm. It's starting to take focus. It's starting to be the first hire, which you didn't hear before. It was a lot of demand gen, a lot of like paid being put forth. It's been ABM and those sort of conversations, but content's coming back. Product marketing coming back to the customer is taking the forefront. Am I in an echo chamber here, or are you all feeling this too, that this shift is happening? And why, more importantly, why do you feel like this shift is happening?
So I feel like there has been a consistent effort by groups like the Product Marketing Alliance to actually put a definition around product marketing in the past 10, 15 years. Because this is something where like kind of one of the, and again, this might be an echo chamber as well for me. I don't know. But there's been a lot of fungibility or kind of uncertainty around what product marketing is and what product marketing does for that was there for quite a while. So now you're starting to see more people, I feel like, agreeing on what the duties of a product marketer is. And as those job roles and as those job definitions become a bit more solidified, people are starting to realize, oh, we actually do need this now. You'll have like, we actually do need this role. This role is actually really important. It's kind of the what is it Gartner calls it? What is Gartner calls it in the hype cycle? We're not quite at the trough of disillusionment at the back end of the hype cycle. We're like coming up the hill at this point. I don't know what that
this gets me
calls, but everyone here.
I don't know what it's called either, but I
Yeah.
know what you're talking about.
No, I mean, for me, I think it's what's changed recently is a couple of things. One is, of course, the consumer or the customer behavior has changed. Right? I mean, we don't no longer expect customers to just engage with us during the buying cycle and then just leave. Right? I mean, they expect a continuous engagement from the brand, and even especially that's true in B2C market, where you are seeing that hey, depending on if the brand has a strong positioning or values, and I cannot get that, like my values are reflected in the brand that I'm investing in, then I'm going to walk away. I mean, we've seen examples of that with Chick-fil-A to other brands who where the values have collided and people have walked away, right? So consumers are more engaged with the brands on an ongoing basis. It's the process of engagement does not stop at the buy or acquisition stage. So that's one. On the other hand, the role of the CMOs also changed, right? The CMOs are no longer just responsible for customer acquisition. I mean, they've now they're responsible for the business growth. What does that mean? That they're responsible for retention, they're responsible for expansion in their existing customer base.
Gosh.
So when you look at that, and then you, of course, I mean, to coming back to my original kind of thinking, product marketing is sitting at the core of this entire marketing function, then of course you expect the product marketing role to be expanded to support this new reality, right? So as if your customers are expecting personalization and the content to be tailored to them, you have to go to product marketing. Hey, how do I talk to developers versus marketers versus IT folks? Then we as product marketers are now responsible for making sure that we can communicate to these different personas in their own language to talk to their own pain points. Same thing after we go through acquisition cycle, and then more focused on retention, right, and or expansion. Then again, it's coming to us and saying, hey, I need something that I can go back and say, hey, you loved our product, here is more you can do. I mean, or here is something that you can add to what the experience that you're getting. So I think this is where that's why product marketing is getting more and more involved and really driving the entire growth. And that's what I see changing, and resulting into a lot more expectations coming from product marketing.
I'm glad that you said that, because I have this idea that I've been kicking around lately, that something that's sort of changed is, not that necessarily any of us are, operating on like a product-led growth kind of model, but I think that trend has led to a different buying cycle, where people want to do more research before they engage a salesperson. And I think that's really increased the value of a product marketer too, because a product marketer is putting that information in front of them, and it can't just be like super high level content. It's got to have value, and it's got to show how your product fits into the ecosystem. For all of us that work in cybersecurity, you're talking about how it fits into the mesh, or the whatever layering term you use, layering term du jour. But at the end of the day, that's sort of driving I think an importance in product marketing too, because now I think more than ever, brand and product are very, very closely intertwined. Like, the brand is the product and the product is the brand. I mean, that was true with B2C products. Like, you don't say I want a cola, you say I want a Coke, right? Like, the product is the brand. But that's happening in technology, I think, and more specifically in cybersecurity, where you refer to the platform sort of like for the function that it carries out in your stack. And I think that that's driving a lot of these trends as well. I'm all over that. I love it.
I love what you said about, I mean, I think we can clearly see like calling a cola versus a Coke. I can see calling like endpoint protection, LastPass or one password, like calling out to those platforms for sure, being the go-to versus saying, do you have endpoint protection, right? So
people don't even know what that is,
Right. You're calling to the platform. Yeah.
There's even disagreements in the larger market about what an endpoint even is at that point. Like, how do you even define that? So if you can't define the terms in like an agreed upon way, which technically, the amount of discussions that I had where people argued with me about whether a server was an endpoint or not, way more than I ever expected to actually have.
No, but this is also kind of self-fulfilling for a cybersecurity industry, right? You want to keep it vague so that then you have chance to explain your own point of view, and then
Exactly.
kind of say that, okay, this is what I mean by this. The other guy doesn't really mean it.
It's open to interpretation.
I want to come back to something that Ashish said in terms of the CMO, because that feels like a lot of pressure on a single human to now not just be responsible for one entity in terms of like more pipeline or more leads, but like growth of the organization. How else are you seeing product marketing fit into helping that poor soul bear the brunt of this responsibility? And Matt, Andy, anything to add in regards to that?
I mean, I think that was spot on. I think that the role of, it's funny because in cybersecurity, we're always talking about the CISO. And I think the CISO and the CMO have something that's really in common. And that's like, they have one foot in the C-suite and one foot out a lot of the time. They're not fully introduced in, it's almost like they're still reporting up, but they have the full responsibility of their office at the same time. And I think that creates a lot of pressure. And it's almost like the authority hasn't caught up to the responsibility all the way. And so I think that builds on a lot of pressure too, because you're not able to always be decisive as a CMO in the same way the CFO can say, yes, you're getting budget, or no, you're not getting budget, or this, we're going to end this program, and like whatever other C-suite folks might say. I don't think that the CMO has that level of authority yet in many cases. So I think that is a pressure cause as well, because you're not able to make the call all the way. You have to defer to someone else, and every time you do that, it slows everything down.
And even in some points, it's you have to defer to someone who doesn't fully understand what your job is in the first place. Like, you might be doesn't necessarily understand what your job is in the first place, I should say. I've seen, in terms, Andy mentioned the CISO, which, I mean, there's still organizations where like the CISO reports into the chief information officer or the chief technology officer.
Exactly.
I remember having those conversations. I've been in organizations where there's a VP of marketing as the top marketing title, but they report into the chief revenue officer, who often has a sales background and not a marketing background. Now, there are some people who are heading up sales who have both a sales background and a marketing background, and I'm not saying like those people don't exist, but having a non-chief marketing officer who actually understands marketing at a value driver perspective and kind of how marketing actually functions in the real world is still a rarity. And I do agree with Andy, at the chief marketing officer level, it's like you have the C-level title, but you don't really have the same C-level authority. Like, you have to get approval from the board or from the CEO, and then you can get someone like the chief operating officer or the chief financial officer or even the chief revenue officer can come in and say, no, we're not doing that. And that's the answer. They have this the weird thing in the buying cycle of it's like they're not a like, they can't say yes to a deal, but they can say no to a deal, essentially. The number of times I've had those in terms of persona building, it's like, anyway. It's a lot of responsibility, and ultimately the job of the chief marketing officer, from my perspective as someone who has never held this job title in my life, is to make sure that you have the right people in place in the roles that they need to be in. And you listen to the people that you bring in to be the ones who are like the boots on the ground in product marketing, especially in terms of the CMO, can be the person who is the day-to-day executor of the strategy, where the chief marketing officer is the one who's having like the C-level conversations or like presenting to the board. Like, your product marketing leader is the one who's making sure, from a blended strategic tactical perspective, that pieces are moving forward in your go-to-market. Everyone's kind of moving in the same direction on a day-to-day, much lower level type of thing. Because I don't know about the rest of the people on this call, but I almost never have a chief marketing officer where I tell them bad news in the exact same way that I tell bad news to my peers. So
you are very thoughtful in how you deliver news to your CMO versus how you deliver news to your peers.
Well, it's not more or less thoughtful necessarily. It's greater or less context, because like, if I'm talking to the demand gen person about a problem in a demand gen program, I'm going to spend less time providing context, because I don't have to provide them the context. They know this context already. That's kind of the same. It's the difference in that perspective.
Got it. And you've been the VP, you've been working under the C-suite of insert title here. How have you seen the impact of this shift in what's required of a CMO or even a head of marketing? I mean, and their responsibility shift and what is required from product marketing to help, ease that if possible.
To help ease that. So, well, number one, I think something that many folks here have read and seen and maybe even had some experience around, and folks listening in on this call, is the average tenure of a CMO, VP, whoever's heading marketing is woefully short-lived. When the stuff hits the fan, typically, when the change needs to happen, it happens within marketing first. That's just been from my lived experience. But with wearing the product marketing hat, when you come in and work with any leadership and they realize that, oh, wow, product marketing, not only can they craft the positioning and the messaging for the product and all this great stuff, but hey, by the way, can you also help with what our talent acquisition team needs in order to bring those great hires on, right? We've got to have that messaging locked down. And oh, by the way, we want those people to stick around. So can you give us some pointers on what we may need to put together as far as keeping our employees engaged, happy, and all this kind of thing? Then there's also the piece of dealing with PR, public relations, analyst relations, all that. So then it goes from being just true product marketing, where, again, as I mentioned earlier, you're kind of contributing in other ways, and when I've worked with leadership teams and sat on leadership teams, that was part of it. It's like, okay, we have X amount of dollars to spend. We need to spend those thoughtfully. And if I know I can save, let's say, I'm just throwing out a figure, $25,000 on what would be needed to hire a PR firm to write us some releases, get those out, work the analysts, all those sorts of things, where I can take those dollars and say, okay, C-suite, let's, I will take a knock at this, or I will have someone else on the team take a knock at this, and we run with it. And then those dollars can be dedicated to some other effort that we're trying to push, right? So if I, work with a creative director or someone on the team that says, I have this fantastic idea, talk to the manager, and this is what we're going to do to, get this campaign off the ground. Then if that's going to help me reach my goals, then darn it, that's when I'm going to figure out where the dollars need to shift, right? And I think more of the C-suite folks are valuing people who can not only put that plan together, make the case, but then bring the data behind it and test that hypothesis and take those findings and then keep refining them again and again until you have that running like a well-oiled machine. Where I see some folks, and I've fallen flat on this, it's like, ooh, shiny object syndrome, where I want to run multiple tests, but it's like that can be too much too soon, to where you're not getting the proper data flow to make those educated decisions, and you can start burning through budget really quick instead of turning things off when they need to be turned off and then reassessing and going from there. So that's just kind of how I see the role as it has evolved. But I'm curious, Ashish, and what some of your thoughts are around there. So I see you nodding a little bit there too. So
Yeah, it has, right? I mean, as I said, for me, the role, as in what we call marketing, has also changed, right? And marketing is not just pushing an ad and hoping for the best. I mean, we are now vying to know our customers, prospects a lot more. We want to understand what they buy, where are they hanging out, what are they buying. I mean, we are reaching out from with social media to events to virtual events. Everything is under kind of everything can be explored to really reach out to your target audience. What that means is now, then there is demand for content to be created, and how do we reach out to these folks? I mean, it's never going to be enough to say, we did this and now check mark and your job is done. And we launched a new product, the launch was successful, off you go. But then that's no longer the case, right? Now it's that continuous engagement that our customers expect from us at a brand level. They also want to understand, what are we doing? I mean, who is the new, if they're rolling out a case study versus a demo versus, I mean, all these things we are looking to go and kind of evangelize. So I mean, all this, of course, needs a lot more stuff to feed in. I mean, I look at it as like a hungry monster that needs content to be fed on a constant basis. So, this is where product marketing really needs, comes in. And but at the same time, it's not that they can do it in vacuum, right? I mean, of course, there is content. There is also, product experts, sales engineers. I mean, you have to work together as a team, but at the same time, you have to make sure that everybody stays on the message. I mean, you're not going and saying something that doesn't align with what you want to communicate to market with. So yeah, I mean, product marketing also, it's just not just creating content, but really making sure that you understand the broader marketing landscape. And even though you may not be experts in all of these, but you kind of have a pulse on everything.
It does seem to have expanded a bit. We only have 14 minutes left, and I know that a very hot topic right now is AI, and you all have mentioned the importance of writing. Ashish, you just mentioned it in your last comment in regards to sort of the glue that holds everything together in terms of the content you all produce. It is really what you do at the end of the day with a million lenses on it regarding how you're talking to your audience and what the product needs to produce and the problems you're solving and how you're speaking to all, it's not just one audience, it's now multiple. And then you have all of these different layers on it. But AI has showed up. And how do you see that? Everybody feels like it's coming to take our jobs as writers. Is that true? How does AI play a part in product marketing? Do you feel like it is a friend or foe?
I can start. I mean, this is one of my favorite topics to discuss these days. I mean, everybody's talking about AI, right? I mean, so especially like generative AI, and it's not just writing content. It's also how do you produce videos? I mean, and it's also, I mean, good and bad both. I mean, we have accurate information, misinformation also stemming from the same thing. So, but my view is like it's not. I mean, there is no reason to be afraid of AI, right? I mean, at this point, yes, I mean, AI would have to evolve a lot more to really catch up to what we as product marketers see our job. Right? It's not, as I said, it's not just content writing. It is understanding that bigger marketing picture and how do we help this marketing picture deliver the growth. But at the same time, I mean, yes, I see definitely AI helping in some aspects, right? I mean, especially when you look at something like personalization, that let's say you created a white paper. Now you want to create that, you wrote it for a marketing persona. Now you want to, put it for IT persona, or if you created something for security for a CISO. Now you want to take maybe your product does compliance, or you want to create a persona based for legal. So then things like that, definitely AI can help at least get things started. I mean, it won't be accurate 100%, but at least generative AI can help you kind of minimize the time you need to spend to rewrite stuff, or leverage your stuff that you already created to create another flavor, another personalization from that. On the other hand, right, you can also outsource some of the activities that you do on a daily basis, right? I mean, I like, creating landing pages for events, for this is like the most mundane activity that we kind of have to support in some cases. AI can definitely do that, right? And so then all of that can be outsourced. So things like that, where you can leverage AI to help your job do better, but not really worry that hey, if I'm only writing content and I'm going off in some sort of cave and writing content, then I should be worried. But none of us are doing that here.
I mean, kind of the big thing that I say all the time, really, is that the AI tools, like the different writing tools, the video production, whatever, they are great if you know what you want already. But it's like that's kind of the difference. You have to understand what you're looking for before you go off and use one of these tools, because the tool is just the tool. If you have no idea what goal you're trying to achieve, or what direction you want to take, then you're just going to get junk out. It's the whole what have we heard for decades in data analysis: garbage in, garbage out. is the phrase. It's the exact same thing with these large language models and the generative AI tools. If all you're doing is telling it, oh, write me 3,000 words on endpoint security, well, sure, it can do that. But if you don't know anything about endpoint security, you're not going to be able to judge the accuracy of what's coming out of that. And that's really the critical piece. How knowledgeable are you about your market and about your persona to be able to then, when you get that output, guide it in the direction that it needs to go?
And what do you think?
I think it's an excellent tool as far as productivity. It's a great brainstorming partner. I've used it for for that, just for the quick, immediate ideas, and let's get a different spin on that. And but I do see it as enhancing people's productivity. Where it gets a little bit worrisome for me is I have lots of nieces and nephews who know about AI and think it's a wonderful thing because they're like, oh, you mean I don't have to write this essay or book report and I could just, use this great online tool and it can kick everything out that I need? Well, it's gathering that source information from someplace, right? And when you have impressionable young minds or just any minds learning that stuff, as Ashish touched upon a little bit earlier, it's that could be a bad thing, because then it's like, what information is it learning and is it spitting back? Is that accurate? Right? I mean, it can be a wonderful tool if leveraged and used correctly, but I do still believe there needs to be some guardrails, because I was just reading an article the other day on the medical community and how doctors groups and stuff are starting to look at this, especially with people with rare diseases, to go through this and be able to do prompt engineering to say, I've tried this, and this, and this. What could the diagnostic code be here? What are we missing? And using AI as a tool to be able to leverage all those data inputs and say, what about X, right? So in that regard, it's like, okay, as long as the information it's pulling from is still accurate, validated, truthful, and can be trusted, it's a great tool, but there's still a little bit of a ways to come with it, so.
I would agree with pretty much everything that everyone said. It's a tool, not a replacement. But I will say one added caveat is it also depends on, if you're, as a marketer, it depends on your category. Because I'm in a category where we're kind of moving into uncharted territory. And if we use terminology that we use in our, kind of in our other marketing content, what we get back from AI is very weak, because it doesn't have stuff to pull from. It doesn't have context to pull, If we use like the umbrella category, it can write quite a decent piece, because there's lots of information there. There's a legacy of information to pull from. So that's an interesting kind of caveat to the whole thing is, where are you in your go-to-market stage? Are you a new category, or are you working in an existing category? Because it makes a huge difference. Huge.
Yeah, and even when you're creating a new category, right? I mean, you cannot continue to rely solely on one tool to do your job. I mean, that's why we are the subject matter experts in a way, right? I mean, we have to, as Matt was saying, you got to know what you're really looking for, and then asking something to write the entire white paper for you is probably not a good idea. But I mean, maybe you can outsource the opening paragraph, for example, right? And maybe that can be done. So I think there are definitely ways to leverage AI more effectively if you know what you're looking for. So I mean, definitely, as product marketers, as our roles have expanded, I mean, we can get all the help that we get, right?
I mean, based off of what to go through these days and what's on their shoulders, and then all of you trying to laddering up to make it all happen. Yes to that. More help, please. Yes. The last question I have for you all in this is, we've talked about what product marketing was meant to do, where it is today. We've mentioned AI in the realm of that. Where do you see it going? We've sort of danced around this, but in sort of each of you getting a last say, so to speak, of the importance of this role. Where do you see it going? And I'm going to start with Matt. Where do you see this role going in your experience?
I see product marketing becoming even like further, even like more deeply entrenched in the organization. Andy made a point earlier about product-led growth, essentially. So as you get as kind of the buying experience and the prospect the desire for kind of a unassisted research, essentially, for prospects and customers continues, because fewer and fewer people are going to actually want to have to talk to sales to make a buying decision. The skill of product marketers to understand the market and understand the persona and talking to customers and translating the technology into business value is just going to become more and more critical, especially as more companies get founded, as market consolidation happens, as the push toward more platform approaches happen. That's going to become more critical over the next few years and decades.
What do you think, Anne?
I think it's going to evolve even more than what we're seeing today. And I already see it happening, where product marketing is also meshing and becoming one with product management, where I've talked to product managers when they tell me about their day-to-day, and their day-to-day sounds an awful lot like a lot of the charge of what my day-to-day is. So I think we're going to start to see more of that, where it's just a consolidation of roles, and you have this one person that not only can they deal with engineering teams, can they help take these products to market and develop the positioning and all the go-to-market strategy and all this. It's all going to fall under one house eventually, but I see some folks kind of nodding, kind of going, Ashish is like, It really depends on the size and the stage of the organization, because
Definitely.
you will still have to have people who are just pure product marketing. But I think other organizations are dabbling a little bit in the waters of, maybe we should mesh these two roles and see what the output is.
What about you, Ashish? Why don't you?
So I agree and disagree with Anne at the same time. I mean, because I've been part of organizations with these two. Both the structures have been in place where CPO kind of owned, or the GM owned the both product management, product marketing underneath, and then or the marketing being a separate function, and then product marketing being part of marketing. I think, as you said, and it depends on the company stage and where they are in their kind of growth. But I think I see product marketing evolving more and being more entrenched into marketing, and really being close with sales. I mean, we are become expected to be the voice of customer, right? I mean, so being close to engineering, you're never going to be that. So for me, I think voice of customer means that you are now going to be on the forefront. I mean, today, if you talk to like salesperson, it's like, you have a marketing in your title, so I'm not really comfortable bringing you on a sales call, right? I think that's going to change, and as product marketers project themselves as more of a subject matter expert, more of industry experts, I think this is that kind of apprehension of bringing product marketing into sales conversations and really having them talk to your customers, prospects. I think that will change. And then at the same time, I mean, you are in a way responsible for the go-to-market motion. So you are, as product marketers, you're now expected to do a lot more. And I think that that stack is will continue to grow in a way for me.
Andy, bring us home. You started this whole conversation. You and I had an offline meet and greet, and you sort of kicked this whole thing off for us around this concept. You believe in the rise of the product marketer and that it's going to really enable companies to go further. So what is it for you in terms of where this role is going?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone said some really interesting things in this last part about, where the role is going to go. And it's kind of interesting how, one of the things that we talked about in our warm-up call was about how some product marketers come from product and some product marketers come from things like content or more, customer kind of facing functions of the marketing org. And I think that it will keep evolving, and I think that there will be cases for both. And that, I mean, for myself, I see myself moving more in the direction of product marketing and brand. But I think that it's perfectly understandable that some organizations would want to go in the product direction and really get product marketers that are comfortable kind of talking about the product at a practitioner level and then being able to sort of evangelize and, speak on it even at, on customer calls or at conferences. So I just think that as companies look to consolidate function, they're going to try to find ways to use product marketers, because product marketers, are the spoke, or they're the hub of the spokes in a lot of ways. They are the conductor, kind of tying it into all these other statements that people made. So I just think it's just, to everyone's point, it's going to keep getting more prominent and important to the function of a modern product-led brand.
I'm so grateful to each of you, Andy and Ashish and Matthew. Thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. So important as this shift continues to happen towards how companies can find their way through this challenging time. I don't know what to call it. I don't know if we're in a recession. I don't know.
Strange times. Just say it's just strange times.
It is.
It's a little peculiar out there.
It is, and nobody's alone. We're all hanging on to our hats, and it's going to be okay. But if you're looking for that next step or that next place to go, and you're a marketer or you're on the product side, you're trying to find a way through, product marketing might be your next step. So if you have any questions, you want to learn more about product marketing, please reach out to any one of these folks. They've been in this space for a long time, and they got you, and they've been wonderful. So thank you all so much. This roundtable is brought to you by MKG Marketing, the digital marketing agency that helps complex B2B brands get found via transparent, measurable digital marketing. It's hosted by me, Carrie Gard, CEO and co-founder of MKG Marketing. And if you have an idea like Andy did and you want to hang out with me to discuss it, maybe I'll be bringing in another roundtable. Let's go. Let's have it. I'm here for it. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.